several friends arriving already. So why don't we just kick it off and start our Codex group meeting, February 12th, 2026. We have three amazing presentations planned for today. So first we have Saketh, who's the CEO and founder of SwiftLaw. And then we have Alexandre Glaria, who will be presenting his Codex project, CBC. So excited to learn from you all. So today everyone gets a little bit less time as we have three presentations. So we have still 20 minutes per presenter. And just a quick other announcement. We just announced the Codex Future Law Conference. So, the main event is on April 16, but there are numerous exciting other events, including a hackathon and a boot camp, and a UN AI for Good Law Track conference in this entire week. So we call it Codex Future Law Week now. And I encourage you to check out the program and hopefully join us in April. So codexfuturelaw.com, you can find all the information on that. But with that, so I will turn it over to Saketh. I know he has like another meeting to run to where he's also pitching. But yeah, this is a bit of an update. We've learned about SwiftLaw before, and curious to hear where the journey took you, Saketh. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Roland. It's really an honor to be back here at Codex. I think I was last here maybe 2 years ago. And a lot has happened since. So let me first share my screen.
Yes.
I'm founder of SwiftLaw. SwiftLaw is a vertical AI platform for fund formation. Really, we just want to help people launch funds really quickly. That's the premise. And a little bit about me, first off, is I necessarily didn't get into funds or legal tech on purpose, I would say. Back in 2023, I was very much into the crypto space, and I was really trying to find people to buy the various, crypto, really real world assets that I was trying to put on chain. And I went to a conference in Salt Lake City with a bunch of emerging managers. And I was trying to pitch these different emerging managers to sort of buy my crypto projects, and really no one was buying it. No one really cared. But while I was there, I befriended dozens of emerging managers. A lot of them were sort of real estate professionals or HP executives, and really these like Bay Area Indian uncle types. And a lot of them really wanted to start these like small venture funds, small real estate funds, and so on. And while I was talking to them, they're really excited about me because I was just an ambitious kid who took a gap from school to come there and just work on something full time. And so they took me under their wing, and I basically worked with these fund managers, building various tools for them. I built chatbots. I built, like a CRM automation tool. And eventually, I think the biggest headache that I saw was that their lawyers were just not very responsive to them, and the entire fund formation process was just something that was super expensive and tedious for them to just execute on. And so I decided to sort of take a swing at that. And in that process and in learning more about fund formation, specifically for an emerging manager, right? Someone that's trying to raise, let's say, under $150 million. Large law firms, your AmLaw law firms are not necessarily, geared towards these emerging managers. Usually it's like a very high margin, service for the law firm. Usually it's a very relationship heavy, sort of like service that they provide. And so for an emerging manager that just wants to get their fund, created and get them out the door so they can start raising capital, it sort of was like a little bit of an inefficient process for them. It was actually highly inefficient. Oftentimes, some managers would wait 6 months to get their fund created, and it's really sad if a fund manager, their asset management career ends before it really starts. And that was something that I'd seen constantly amongst these emerging managers. And so I sort of decided to do something about it, right? And first, actually, before that, in understanding why I chose like this emerging manager sort of like this group to focus on, I really saw that even amongst my own peer group, there's tons of people starting funds. In fact, Roland was someone that I was speaking to who started a fund recently. There are other people in my network that are starting funds, and it's really this long tail that's emerging, where even at fund launch, I met numerous fund managers that were doing really niche things or had niche strategies. For instance, one was starting a self-storage like fund. Another one was starting a Pokemon Go card, investment sort of strategy fund. And so there's all these sort of various strategies that a fund structure can support. Because the fundamental sort of insight that I had was that a fund is simply just a vehicle to pool capital and do something productive with it. And if you have a strategy or if you have some sort of edge, then you could potentially go out into the market, raise capital, and then scale whatever that strategy is. And so in understanding what actually fund formation is, fundamentally it's three documents. It's your LPA document, it's a limited partnership agreement. It's your PPM, usually outlines your risk factors for your fund strategy, and your subscription document, which is how investors essentially onboard onto your fund, or that's how you get investors to come onto your fund or to invest. And usually these documents are, 160 plus pages long. They're pretty long documents that previously pre-LLMs, law firms would use something like Contract Express or try to use various tools, but it just wouldn't work because these documents were far too long. And so law firms would actually have their entire funds practice be manual. So you'd have associates just write these 60-page documents or use templates and essentially do the full drafting process by hand. And what I realized is that really looking at numerous fund documents over the past years, funds really break down into a small set of recurring terms. So as you can see here, I said fees, carry, jurisdiction, fund size, any structure, and so on. And really, what the work is in practice is customizing these terms within those templates to create a full set of fund documents. And that is essentially what our platform does, is a vertical sort of AI platform, a workspace for fund formation in which you can create a term sheet, assign that term sheet to a client so the client can fill it out, and then use that term sheet to then generate your LPA and subscription documents, so your larger fund document set. And from there, you can use that into a chatbot that's enriched with more research so that you can have sort of a chat interactive session with your documents. And there's sort of more tools that I'll show off right now, actually, instead of describing it. So right here is the current fund formation workspace for SwiftLaw. I hope everyone can see my screen right now. And
Yes.
perfect. So right here, I'll go to a new deal and I'll create a new client, right? I'll say, Saketh Kesiraju, fund one, and I'll create an empty client workspace. So now that I've created a workspace for myself, I'll go into my documents tab. These are all the documents I've been working on recently, and I'll click into, a term sheet that I want to, use. And so this is the term sheet. One thing to note here is that we built a native docx editor into this workspace. So that's something that's usually extremely hard. Docx is the formatting sort of underpinning for Microsoft Word. And so any lawyer that drafts documents or uses documents needs a docx native editor to fundamentally do work. And so spent a lot of the last 18 months really perfecting this docx editor and making sure that documents can get imported into it, retain formatting, get exported out, and retain the formatting. Sounds simple, quite hard to do in practice. And so right here, you can see a term sheet. It has all these placeholders or blanks in it. And so what I'll do from here is actually generate questions based off of those blanks so that I can create a questionnaire and assign it to a client. Right here, I'll say a questionnaire and generate this. Move over to the questionnaire tab. This is one that I've worked on before, and for the sake of time, I'll just show you what that looks like. So here, the questionnaire is created. I can hit share and I get a link. And this is the interface that the client will see. It will pretty much be like a form view where I can, answer these questions one by one. Edit something, 10%, etc. And when I'm done, I just hit submit. And now my job as the client is over. So I can go back to the dashboard for the attorney, see that the answers from the client are all in the right places. And if there's something that I need to change, I can do that. And if everything looks good, I can hit submit and generate. And now it will generate a complete term sheet. Well, it should generate a complete term sheet. Um, I don't know what's going on. This is the the humor with, maybe these live demos, but let me just show you what the term sheet it should generate looks like. Uh, here. So this is sort of like a term sheet that would get generated from it with all the insertions in the right place. And from here, with this term sheet that's been generated, I can go back to my workspace and say, create now like an LPA and a subscription document based off of this term sheet. So let's say this one looks pretty good to me. And so I hit generate. And now it's essentially extracting all of those terms and creating an entire LPA and subscription document. And the way it's doing that is we have sort of a set of LPAs that we in the back end that we use as sort of like golden reference documents. And so it essentially uses that as well as the terms in the term sheet to create this full document set for the LPA and the subscription document. So we'll give it maybe a few seconds. While that's going, I can just show you what it should look like, which is the document that's generated will look something like this. It'll be like a full LPA. Usually it's 60 pages. This is an insertion that was made. I just ran this entire sort of flow right before the call. I didn't really anticipate that would stop working on the call, but I guess you got to anticipate that. Um, but yeah, this is sort of like a full 60-page LPA that was generated. You can see that, all these insertions are made. Everything looks pretty good. I'll show you the subscription document as well. And yeah, it's essentially, from term sheet to complete fund document set within a matter of minutes. And usually if you're a, private funds group, the time it takes to go from, a term sheet or not even having a clear idea what the terms of a fund is to a complete document set is months. It can be. And in terms of drafting time, that's like 20, 30 hours. And if you're getting billed at a partner rate, that's pretty expensive. And so fundamentally, we've abstracted and compressed the timelines to be far, far shorter than what it is today. And so now that these fund documents are created, I'll just add them to my workspace here, and I can go to the conductor tab here, add it as context, one of these documents, let's say the term sheet, add some sources, let's say the market standards, SEC, the web, some state codes. I'll say something like, hey, are there glaring errors or issues in my term sheet I should watch out for? And now what it's doing is it's essentially making web searches to all these various whitelisted sources that I've previously, bookmarked, and it's finding the relevant sources and then using our document as context to provide a sort of a real informed, like sort of feedback for the document. And this is like a back and forth conversation that you can continue to have. And as you can see, there's really specific issues that's highlighting. It provides some citations for me as well. You can click on one of these. This is a pretty in-depth, ILPA sort of guide that is what a professional fund attorney would use as a reference document. And so these are the recommendations. I can sort of keep going, or another sort of visualization tool or tool that,
Well,
yes.
maybe folks have some questions, because we are like a little bit, is there anything specific you still wanted to show, or otherwise, I'm sure.
Yeah, maybe this is just a visualization tab here, which is the fund that we've just created. These key terms is the main sort of backbone of a fund. And so you can visualize it right here. And if I wanted to change one of the key terms, let's say from 80 million to 50 million, it auto syncs across the document. So this is just like a really easy way to change terms in your fund without having to sort of like go into the document, search for it, and make, like drafting related changes. You could sort of just use this interface as a shortcut. Another visualization we have here is an entity structure visualization. I find it like pretty helpful considering that funds are complex structures and it's hard to understand, what goes into what and how carry works or how, various parts of funds work. And so this is sort of just a visualization to help, fund attorneys understand essentially what these documents actually mean in practice. But that's the sort of full workspace. It's really a end-to-end vertical platform for funds. And that's it. That's pretty
Awesome. So this help practicing fund formation attorneys with their work, just to be more efficient, or is this something that the fund managers will use themselves instead of using an attorney?
So it's really for the attorney. But we sort of operate as, a full stack sort of like fund formation business, as well as we sell this platform to other law firms as well. So if we have a fund manager that's in our network and wants to go through us, then we will essentially be sort of the full stack solution for that manager. And that's where really our vision is. However, for now, we've been working with sort of pilot law firms to just make our workflows a lot stronger and to just validate them in the real world as well.
Uh-huh. Okay, great. Do folks in the group have any questions? You can use the chat function, and yeah, well, you might be sort of formulating your questions. I have a couple more questions. So one is, so you're seeding the system with, the whatever the templates are from the law firm, and those templates, they have like the different variations of specific clauses, right? And then from that, you can then from those templates, your system can create a questionnaire that will then help you sort of create the custom documents, correct?
Correct. Yeah. I think that's most helpful for the term sheet, right? Because that's probably the easiest, one-to-one placeholder replacement workflow. But for your larger LPA, PPM subscription documents, it's really, there's clause-specific replacements that need to be done. It's not just, term for term replacements. And so that's where it runs sort of a longer process to do this sort of like document creation workflow, which I skipped over earlier just to save some time. But yeah, that is sort of a more robust workflow.
Yeah. And for these external, that's a cool feature too, to be able to like, so run those documents by some external benchmarks, for example, and so I wonder, how do you create, how do you know what's market, and what kind of data are you using to enable that feature?
Yeah, so market terms is really from whitelisted sources that I've run into or fund attorneys have told me that they use as reference points. So the ILPA guidelines, that's the International Limited Partnership Association. They essentially set standards. They put out templates. They put out various sort of private market data and information regarding private funds. And so that's
Uh-huh.
the number one source that we go to. And then there's also just web search. So we also scrape, the entire web essentially for private funds or market related terms. And then we try to, figure out if that's a credible source and then whitelist and see if, essentially that, is in line with what we hear from our attorneys as well. Yeah, so in terms of privacy, there's no reinforcement learning happening with the ingested content. In fact, the entire system runs locally. So you can think of it as like a Claude code, fine-tuned specifically for, or like Claude Cowork, something that you might have seen, fine-tuned specifically for private funds. In that, the entire system is just local. So it's using your local files and so on.
So, Luciana and Juan's asking, can you get capital from other jurisdictions for entities outside the US?
Yeah, you can. In fact, one of a firm that we were working with was actually a Canadian GP stakes firm. And for them, their limited partnership agreement had like a special feeder vehicle as well that was necessary for them to essentially raise capital from outside US investors. And so, yeah, the actual structuring of these fund vehicles is obviously dependent on, an actual attorney advising you on this. But yeah, that is all doable through the platform.
Got it. Cool. So I don't think there's any other questions. And yeah, we're a little bit on a sort of tighter schedule today because we want to hear from three folks today. So Saketh, thank you so much for the updates. It's exciting, and I know you have to hop to your next event already. So really appreciate you joining us, and it's very cool. And yeah, good luck with all the next steps.
Thank you. It was a real pleasure to be here and speak to you all. So thank you for having me and have a great rest of the day.
Yeah, and how can people, if they wanted to reach out to you, can you perhaps put your contact info in
Yep.
that'd be great.
So my email is Saketh, Saketh at tryswiftlaw.com. I'll drop that in the webinar chat. So anyone that wants to, have a pilot or just use the product can reach out, and I'd be happy to set that up for you guys. So
Super. Thank you, Saketh.